Happy Thursday, people. It's Kevin Pillar. It's Erik Kratz dancing. Scotty Braun, also AJ Pierzynski with us in spirit. Holy AJ Pierzynski today. That's right. We should show it right off the jump here. AJ and the Pope, the duo that everyone wanted. The Pope is a huge White Sox fan, so it's awesome. Very cool to see AJ, meet him in person. He posted 7-year-old me at my first communion. Would have never thought I would get to meet the Holy Father, Pope Leo. I was honored to give him the last out ball from game 1 of the 2005 World Series, the game he attended. I remember I was there, Kratz, and there's a great picture of the Pope with the Pierzynski jersey and AJ's fam. Really good stuff out there. Great job by the media team out there too. I was there, Kratz, the other day when AJ was looking around and he was like, I've got it. This baseball from the game that he attended, I'm going to give this to him.
That's a cool gift, except does anybody know how game 1 ended?
Not well.
That I remember.
Wasn't it Scotty Pod's walk-off homer? So AJ kept the ball from the top half of the inning?
Oh, I mean, well for them. So wait, you're saying?
So did he keep that ball from the top half of the ninth, or do I have my history incorrect?
I mean, you can't blitz me like that on 2005.
I mean, I thought Scotty Pods hit the walk-off homer in game 1 of the World Series, but our crack team behind the scenes needs to figure that out. But also that first picture, this is cool. Like you meet the Pope, that's like meeting, that's crazy to be. And AJ knows everybody, but man, look at AJ's power alleys. I didn't know he had it like that. So
wait, no, they got it here. So, I mean, it wasn't a walk-off. The White Sox.
It wasn't a walk-off?
Wait. No. You're showing us.
So this is my bad because I should have done my research ahead of time, and
Scotty
I didn't.
Pods, yeah, walk-off was game 2. Yes.
Okay.
So this is right. Game 1, they game 1 top 9 shut it down, and they won the game at home 5-3.
Let me tell you something. We know AJ, and AJ, he can elaborate the truth sometimes. He can do some things that you question his integrity sometimes. The one thing he's not doing is lying to the Pope to his face. So I think he knows that ball was the last out of that game, and he gave it to him.
No, yeah.
We do know that. We do know that.
I wasn't saying the ball was. I was just saying I thought he had kept the ball from the top of the ninth, but Scotty Pods hit the walk-off in game 2. So that was what? Bobby Jenks punched out, whoever it was to end game 1. That's so sick. To give him that's such a great gift.
There's one place you're not going and not being factual, accurate about what you're giving someone as a gift, and that's when you're meeting the Pope.
Yes. I was not saying that AJ was lying. I was not saying he was lying.
I mean, it's still pretty amazing. Like the fact that, Kratz, like as a baseball player, yeah, like there's some really cool perks of the job and there's some cool things that you get to do. But to ever think that, being a baseball player and then, transitioning into broadcasting too would allow you the opportunity to go to the Vatican and meet the Pope is pretty amazing.
It's crazy. People don't get to do it. That's crazy.
And the Vatican loves the White Sox right now. He is a real White Sox fan. He's brought it up multiple times already. He's got some gear. Very cool. AJ will be back in due time from his tour. Big charge to the mound to cover today.
He's charging the mound.
I'm assuming KP, you played with David Peterson, right? Longest tenured Met, and not anymore. He gets traded to the Chicago Cubs. ERA north of 6. Fielding independent pitching number was in the 3s, since expected ERA not as bad, I think, either. Good ground ball rate. Mets defense is not great. Awful yesterday in game 2 of their doubleheader loss. The Cubs just absolutely mollywopped them. So what do we think about this? Jeff Passan reporting it yesterday, talking about how the Cubs desperately need starting pitching help, talking about the ground balls, the fielding independent pitching, the 6.09 ERA, the Mets, he said, infield defense to the best in MLB Cubs infield defense could be a huge help for Peterson. They also recently lost Edward Cabrera in the past, 36 hours to the injured list. They also lost Ben Braun in the last 36 hours. Justin Steele is questionable to return this season. If he does, it'll probably be as a reliever. Cade Horton was awesome for them last year, but he's not part of the picture this year. They need arms. This makes sense to me, KP. David Peterson needs a change of scenery, and also the Mets are on their way to selling, so they can say whatever they want. This is the beginning of the end.
I love everything about this. I love David Peterson as a pitcher. I love him as a human being. And, it's talk about perfect timing. The fact that the Mets did what they did yesterday, and you're talking about this high ground ball rate, and then going from a team like the Mets, who's had their defensive struggles this year, going to the Cubs. When you look around that diamond, Michael Busch, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Alex Bregman, I think he's going to benefit from the fact that he has those guys behind him. He is going to a ballpark that is a little bit more hitter friendly in terms of the long ball in Chicago, especially now that the weather's warm there. And we know how New York can play, not super friendly for hitters and the long ball, but New York is a tough place to play. And this is all that David Peterson's ever known. And he's had kind of an interesting kind of trajectory in his career. He came up with a ton of prospect status and kind of worked himself into the rotation. He's had some moments where he's been really, really good. He's obviously not having a great year this year. But I love it. I love, the fact that anytime you can get out of a place like New York, especially when things aren't going well, and you're going to a team like Chicago where the fan base is, very warm and welcoming and very passionate. And the fact that the Cubs are playing better baseball and that they are expected to be a team that is going to try to win the division and get to the postseason. I love it for all parties. And obviously the Cubs are desperate for any arms right now, major league ready caliber arms that can, slot into their rotation right now. The fact that David Peterson wasn't in the Mets rotation anymore and that they are on their way to be kind of selling off anything that they can here in the near future. I love when teams don't wait to the deadline too. If you have a need right now, the gap between now and the deadline, so much could change in that time of where you're at, what the cost is and all that stuff. I love when teams are like, you know what, let's just make the move right now, because you're probably going to get 2, 3, 4 extra starts out of David Peterson right now between now and the deadline.
Yeah, I love the fact that they did that for David Peterson because he was out of the rotation. But this is why they have advanced metrics. How does a team find value in somebody with a 6.09 ERA? That FIP is huge. And when those guys, very few teams look at that, or very few fans look at that and say, "Oh, this guy, he should be a lot luckier, or he should be doing better than he is." They just look at it and they go, David Peterson, 6.09 ERA, cooked. Don't want him anymore. I think this is something that the Cubs could really be able to add a lot of value to, and we'll get the most value out of it because of exactly what KP said. Great infield defense.
He's 30 years old, and he was an all-star, wait for it, last year. Not like, he was an all-star in 2022, 3. Last year, he was an all-star for the Mets. And he had a down second half, and then it has not picked up since. I've been, I would say, very critical of the Mets switching their pitching program from Jeremy Hefner to the new regime. Even if the new regime's good, you just went through turnover with so much of your coaching staff, and then you expect a new roster and a new coaching staff to all gel from the jump. And it was stupid. It was a poor decision. The Mets got smacked again. So they're out of it. They're done, right? They're 9 games out of a wild card spot, and we're almost at July. They're 12 games under 500. It's not happening for them this year. And KP, the Cubs have had their ups and downs, but they scored 10 runs in each of those games. There were 6 errors against the Mets in that second game. Like, it is all unraveling. Kodai Senga was a mess a couple days ago. We talked about it, right? It was like 11 outs and 98 pitches. Like, he can't throw strikes. Like, it is all falling apart. Mets fans are chanting Pete Alonso in the stands. Keith Hernandez has now lost it on the Mets broadcast, including saying how, what was the quote? "Oh my goodness, one of the worst trades in a long while by the Mets," as Pete Crow Armstrong was doing some damage against them. They traded Pete for a couple months of Javi Baez to do the thumbs down sign. What a mess. What a mess, man. They miss you.
Yeah, it's really funny. I got to stop, thinking that you're not going to get to the points. I jumped the gun a little bit, but I was going to say, who would have thought, obviously, Pete Alonso's, turning out to have a pretty good year. He would much be needed in that Mets lineup right now. But who would have thought Jeremy Hefner would have been the biggest loss for the Mets this offseason? Obviously, you have a guy like David Peterson, all-star last year, 6 ERA this year. And you're looking about the Atlanta Braves pitching rotation, just hammered by injuries. And they're still a team that's in first place. Their pitching has been outstanding. There's clearly something that Jeremy Hefner brings to the table that he clearly did it with the Mets when he was getting the best out of guys like David Peterson, Kodai Senga, and then obviously you're seeing what he's doing right now with the Atlanta Braves. Who would have really thought that a guy like that would make such a huge difference in the organization?
Yeah, shocker. Pitching coaches matter. And Kratz, they also made Dansby Swanson look like Babe Ruth over a 36-hour period as well. Oh my gosh. Dansby had 15 RBIs in it was 24-hour, I guess. He had 8 RBIs in his last 27 games before going up against the Mets this week. And they've got one more, but I mean, the Cubs are 6-0 against the Mets. The Mets are helping their wild card chances, and they might be helping the team now with David Peterson added to the rotation. So add it all up. These two teams are in very different places.
Definitely are, and I think both teams pushed in their sense of pushing in. The Cubs making moves that you're like, wow, this is what I should see from the Cubs in the offseason. Mets making moves that, hey, you know what? They are making moves, which I think they have been doing, but clearly the moves have not gelled. They have not come together as a team, and this season for the Mets was a wash a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. It was, and for them, even if we think David Peterson's going to rebound, and I think I'm going to take the under on the ERA at 6, starting with his Cubs tenure when it's ground ball city to an infield that can vacuum up the baseball as well as anyone. So Christian Scott returns for them this weekend. He'll take one spot. They just announced Zach Thornton is going to take another spot. But we're in a mode now where they're very reliant on Nolan McLean. This is his first full season. It is all unraveling, right? The offense was nowhere to be found. Then they went through the injuries. Now they're going through the starting pitching injuries plus ineffectiveness. It's not like the Cubs aren't going through their own issues. I mentioned how many guys are out for them. And then Shota Imanaga, Colin Ray, Javier Assad, Matthew Boyd. That's your rotation right now, plus Peterson. It's not a shiny rotation. And KP, I would make the case that they're probably going to have to do more, right? This kind of holds things over and hopefully can be a guy that fills up some innings for them. But you would imagine they're going to go after a starter at the trade deadline over the next month or so.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with, plugging in holes, especially before the trade deadline. You have a need for a guy to enter your starting rotation. Maybe they find lightning in a bottle in David Peterson. Maybe it doesn't, but maybe he's just a stopgap. But I wouldn't expect the Cubs to kind of just sit back with the team that they've kind of built around the infield and the outfield position player-wise. They obviously need more from that pitching staff. They've been hammered by injuries. When that rotation is fully healthy, and I don't know if everyone is going to be healthy at the same time, it's a pretty good rotation, but they're definitely a team that probably needs a frontline starter at the deadline.
Yeah, and if you're the Mets, best thing you can do is try to get Freddie Peralta on track for a few starts because he's going to go somewhere else and he's going to pitch well. So try and at least make sure that you get a nice return for him. I can think back to last year when Zach Gallen's struggling, and I know that's kind of carried into this year, but it's like, damn, you have an asset like that in Freddie. It cost you some good players in Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. Try and get him into a good place over the next 5 starts so that you can flip him and get something good because they're toast. I know Will Salmon wrote, they're not necessarily surrendering yet. They're not coming back from 9 games out of a wild card at this point and 80 teams in front of them. I'm sorry. So here's what we're going to do. Tyler Kepner from The Athletic wrote an awesome article about teams trying to mimic the Brewers, including the Mets. That should be number 1 on the list when you take someone like David Stearns. We're going to really dive into this article with him coming up next. You know why you're enjoying this minute? Because we're happy. Kratz, we're happy because we're wearing Mack Weldon.
Yes, I'm 6'5", and nobody can give me tall clothing, but Mack Weldon allows me to have it. So I don't really have to care about how I look, and I still look good because I don't put a lot of time into what I do to pick out my clothes. Mack Weldon takes care of it for me.
Classic, always in style, made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Summer gets sweaty. Don't let unnecessary sweat spots emerge. Mack Weldon's Air Knit X fabric helps you out. Their lightest fabric is fused with nylon mesh for maximum airflow. Skip the midday wardrobe changes. The barely there feel also keeps you feeling more dry and fresh. Don't sweat the heat this summer. Feel as effortlessly cool as you look with Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code FOUL. That's MackWeldon.com, code FOUL. Mr. Kratz, would you like to read this tweet from Jason Stark?
I love Jason Stark. People like to talk about win probability. In the Phillies' case, the last 2 games, it's more like win improbability. Their win improbability odds from Greg Stoll's win probability calculator, say that 3 times, was 0.58% last night when Turner had a 1-2 count, which they ended up scoring 8 runs that inning, and 2.5% tonight when Schwarber was 1-2 count with 2 outs. As you know, they won both games.
That's incredible.
I love that.
KP,
what
a run. We had a great tweet too last night where our team put together like, babe, wake up, it happened again. I mean, that's as late as it gets to roll runs together. And KP, you know what those kind of wins mean for the ball club. Not every win treated equally in terms of the storyline.
No, I mean, I love what the Phillies are doing. I think, you know, much like we probably thought about teams like the Mets, they were just kind of underperforming early in the year. They go out and make a managerial change. You know, history is repeating itself. We saw what happened a couple of years ago when they fired Joe Girardi and Rob Thomas took over, and then Thompson, gets fired. Don Mattingly takes over. I mean, that team is just loaded with talent, you know, and obviously the emergence of guys like Christopher Sanchez, and then getting a healthy Zach Wheeler back, and going out and acquiring a guy like Luzardo. I mean, that team is just impressive.
And the Nats are on pace for the most blown saves of all time.
No, that's not a good stat.
Hey, let's talk to Tyler Kepner from The Athletic. It's great to see you, Tyler. And yeah, what an article. And the timeliness of that article really pops up right now. So I'm going to read it, and then I'll get you to give us the summary, and then we've got a bunch of follow-up questions for you. So he wrote, and I encourage everyone to check it out, the Mets wanted Milwaukee with money. It is not as easy as it sounds. So how was this one to put together?
David Stearns, to his credit, he doesn't hide, and he doesn't get defensive or make excuses. I mean, he was there the other day just doing a sort of state of the Mets press conference, and with the Cubs in town, I thought it was a good contrast or a good setting to write about them and the Brewers background, because the Cubs hired the Brewers manager too, in Craig Counsell, and the Mets hired the Brewers GM in Stearns, because people want to imitate the successful teams, and they feel like, well, if the Brewers can win with a low budget, we can bring in their leadership, give them some more money, and it'll be even better. And that comes with its own set of challenges too. When you're in a market like Milwaukee, I think it's a little bit easier to have a set philosophy and kind of a as Craig Counsell was saying, optionality, where you can send guys up and down, and you can move guys in and out. Whereas if you commit to older guys who make a ton of money, it looks good because they've done a lot in their careers, but they're maybe not positioned as well to keep doing it for the long run. And we've seen that with the Mets. They made some big splashy moves last winter, but not up. The team's gotten worse.
So who's at fault? Is it the money's problem? Is it the owner's problem? Who's getting in the way when you hire away a Craig Counsell? Who's getting in the way in Chicago, or what is getting in the way? And the same thing with New York. They hired away Stearns. Is it Cohen getting in the way? Is it all the money? Is it the pressure? All that stuff.
Yeah, I actually think the Cubs will probably be fine. And if they're not, it's sort of like, well, they've lost an entire rotation, and it's hard for any team to overcome that. I give them a little bit of a pass. But they did spend a ton of money on Bregman and Swanson's been the hottest hitter in the world the last few days. But how good are they going to be going forward for the value they're paying? It's the old thing with free agency, right? Like, you've got to pick the right guys and you've got to win early. Like, if you don't win early in these contracts, like when I covered the Yankees and they got Sabathia and Teixeira and Burnett, and they won the first year, and that paid for it all right there. And we see that sometimes, but it's a risk, because if it doesn't work out right away, you're stuck with a big bill later. So who's to blame? Money is a good thing, right? And like, Stearns didn't apologize because he's like, look, we have access to every player in the universe, in the whole player universe with the Mets, and that's a good thing. But you got to choose wisely, and I don't know if they chose wisely with a lot of guys who had previous injury history and declining stats already, like in the case of a Marcus Semien.
But you said okay, with the Cubs specifically, you said, I don't know if they're going to be able to do well here because of how much their injuries to their pitchers have decimated their rotation. The Brewers go through the same thing. Is it because the Brewers are not afraid to call it? They get rid of pitchers, so they don't even hurt the pitchers. They get rid of them. Is it because the Brewers aren't afraid to call somebody up, and in New York or in Chicago, we call that AAA guy up, I'm afraid to do this or do that?
Yeah, Eric, that's a great point. And we saw the other day, like, Brandon Sproat has not had a good year, but maybe he's rounding into form. He had an amazing night the other night, best night of his career against the Reds. The Brewers and smaller market teams or smaller payroll teams like that tend to give guys a little more longer leash, let them figure things out. Now, the Brewers have a standard, right? Like, they don't come up there and tolerate, much losing, but they also don't have as many options. So they'll give Brandon Sproat a chance, really, that he maybe wouldn't have gotten with the Mets. And if you unlock something, then you have a guy for 5-6 years. And in the Brewers case, probably 4 or 5, and then you trade him at a peak like they did with Freddie Peralta to get Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. They will trade guys at their value rather than buy them at peak value. It's the old thing. Like, if you're not afraid to deal guys when it's going to hurt, then you tend to benefit from that. Like, case in point, the Giants, right? Giants are a big mess. They say they're not going to, anybody's available to trade except for Logan Webb. Well, who's the one guy people would most want? Would be Logan Webb. And now they could reset the most and take some short-term pain and maybe make an incredible deal that can reset the team, but they don't want to trade their best guy. That would be really unpopular. They're a big market team, and he's a great pitcher. So sometimes those small market teams are, well, actually all the time, they're willing to make those tough moves that feel awful in the moment, but feel great down the road.
All right, Tyler, let me ask you a question here. Are we looking at this all wrong? If you were a small market team or a big market team and you're trying to copy a small market team, like you wrote about the Mets trying to copy Milwaukee's model, why wouldn't the Mets just go copy the Dodgers model? Because clearly they know how to spend money. They get the right players. They also draft and develop players. Isn't it probably more beneficial for another mid-market team to copy another mid-market team?
Well, that's a great point, Kevin. And I think the Dodgers are the model because they do everything so well. When they invest in the free agents, they'll make some misses, but they get those guys in the 30s who are still productive, right? That's rare. Those are the guys tend to go to the Hall of Fame. Freddie Freeman, Ohtani is 32 in next month. Mookie is in his 30s, and a lot of times those guys aren't good bets. But if they're all-time great players, maybe they are, and the Dodgers have been able to access those guys while also doing really well with the Milwaukee kind of stuff, like around the margins. Like they bring in a Robleski and he takes his lumps last year, but by game 7 of the World Series, he's one of the guys they trust. They put him in the rotation, and now he's doing great. They have something there, right? They bring guys along, they develop enough guys, like with a smaller market mentality. That's the thing. The Dodgers really are the envy of everybody because they have all the money to access all those players, but they also will find guys going back, 8-10 years when they found Max Muncy off the scrap heap from Oakland, and turned him into something long lasting. Will Smith was the best player in his draft, and he was like a lower round pick, or not a lower round pick, but lower first round pick in that draft. So they draft and develop and have that sort of eye on all the details, like a small market team, but they can go out and spend for the best.
This is the question that AJ always brings up when he's on, and I just am because I played with all these small market teams and the large market teams.
Right.
What's the difference between the Brewers and the Dodgers, or the Rays and the Dodgers? What is the difference? At the end of the day, what are you trying to do as a team? Win what?
We're trying to win the World Series, and the Dodgers and the Brewers and the Rays get to a certain level, and the Dodgers have that extra payroll that puts them over the top. I
disagree. The payroll doesn't put them over the top. They've figured out how to win World Series. It's not the payroll, but it's not the payroll. In my opinion, it's not the payroll that puts them over the top. In my opinion, you push to win a World Series, and I think teams that emulate small markets are not pushing to win a World Series. They're pushing to be successful and hope they win a World Series.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. But you were in Milwaukee, you got to game 7. You were on the same field with the Dodgers. If Taylor doesn't make that catch at the wall, if a couple of things go different, you're in the World Series, the Dodgers are not. So, like, is that hope, or is that like a legitimate chance? The Brewers had a legitimate chance all the time. Last year, yeah, they got smoked in the LCS, but they were on the same field. A bunch of those games were close. What are they doing wrong in your mind?
Well, to me, it's that final move. So here's the example I go to all the time. That year, they came and asked me, would you trade Brandon Woodruff? This is 2018, for anybody who doesn't know. Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns for Jacob deGrom. Would you do that? And in the moment, I said, I really don't know, because they were not staples in our rotation, but they were huge pieces to our bullpen. Obviously, looking forward, that would have been a massive trade that would have been like, well, you don't know what those guys are going to become the next year. Corbin Burns was in the minor leagues, but in the future, it would have turned out bad. Does Jacob deGrom win us a World Series that year, if that's the case, and we don't have to start, Wade Miley twice, Jhoulys Chacin twice? Does that win us a World Series?
It might not, though. Last year I covered the Mariners Detroit division series, and Detroit lost both games that Skubal started, and he pitched really well. But he pitched like 6 innings, and the games are decided in the 7th, 8th, 9th. You give deGrom the ball, maybe he goes out and has the game of his life, but maybe he goes out and gives you 6 great innings, and then you still lose in the 7th, 8th. He didn't. 2013 LCS, right? I always go back to the Tigers of that era.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did Dombrowski do wrong in trying to build that team into a winner? Like, he had one year he had Price, who he traded for, Scherzer, who he traded for, and Verlander, who they drafted. And they lose to Bud Norris and Wei Yin Chen and I think Miguel Gonzalez or somebody. So it was like stuff happens in the playoffs, man. Like the last 2 years, it's happened the Dodger way. But you guys know, a bunch of years before that, the Dodgers could never win the big one. The only one they won was 2020. And they got knocked out in 21, 22, 23. It turned right for them the last couple of years. But if they don't win that bullpen game in San Diego in game 4 in 2024, they're out in the first round again. Dave Roberts probably loses his job. And if 20 things don't happen in game 7 that go their way, last year they don't win in Toronto either. So all these things that's why the beauty of the postseason is, because it gives all these teams that hope, right? Like, I think that's a function, or what do they say? A feature, not a bug. Like, you get to the postseason, that's where you can have a chance to slay the Dodgers. You're not going to keep the Dodgers or the Yankees out of the playoffs almost every time. But in the postseason, you get a chance for wacky things to happen. And it almost did for your Brewers, despite having to start Wade Miley for one batter in game 5 and then Chacin as your ace and all this stuff. It almost happened. Didn't happen, but it almost did. You were right there.
This is playing right into my wheelhouse because I covered that series. I don't know. You might have been there too, right? That Tigers team that you were talking about. So
Well, no, I was, yeah, not that one, but I've been in other ones. Yeah.
that was the most awkward team and clubhouse I've ever been in a room for. And I confirmed with multiple big name players on that team that they felt the same way. From the way it was managed to the collection of talent, it was super weird. I could do an hour on that alone. It was a
That was awesome.
wild
Right?
experience. Brad Ausmus was the manager, yes. And the entire situation I've been in hundreds of variations of clubhouses. If you go year by year, that was number one weirdest one ever with these little clicks and only Torrey Hunter talking half the time and some guys not allowed to talk. It was a mess. It was an absolute mess. So this plays into my question. You can compile all these stars and all of these, high wins above replacement players together. That might not be the right mix. So for the Mets, what's the real identity here? That's what I'm lacking. They talked all offseason about the run prevention, right? And then all of a sudden you're gathering a collection of players that are out of position. So what does that have to do with run prevention? And a highlight was yesterday. The infield was a joke yesterday for the Mets in the second loss there. And then number two is the obsession with these shorter term deals. And some of that has to do with the Dodgers, but that's not working for them right now with Kyle Tucker. Tyler, you know this. Often the first year of a player in a new place doesn't produce the best results. And there's even numbers to show that. So if you're obsessed with these 1 or 2 year deals with certain players, right? Like a Bo Bichette or Jorge Polanco, are you really getting the best return for your investment? Is there a line? Should you be giving a 10, 12 year deal to a Trey Turner? No, but why does it need to be, hey, let's pay double if we can get 2 years instead of 4 years out of this guy? I don't get those two things that were put together in the offseason, and curious to get your take on that because the Brewers certainly value run prevention much more than the Mets did this past offseason.
Right. And Counsell was saying that is something that the Cubs really do well too, and he's right. But yeah, I mean, that was a very curious thing. Like they say, all right, we're going to focus on run prevention, then we have all these guys out of position. Opening day first baseman was Jorge Polanco, never fielded a ball at first base his whole career. So they got rid of Pete Alonso, who plays literally every single day. He hasn't missed a day in 3 years. They don't need to relitigate that whole thing, but I didn't agree with that because I think Alonso was one of those special players who, can maybe defy some of the aging curve. Maybe I'd be wrong, but I thought they really miscalculated the value in a guy who's always going to post. And you know what you're going to get from him. So, yeah, I mean, defense, that's a huge thing that the Brewers do. I mean, I saw Cooper Pratt a few weeks ago when I was down in Nashville for a story, and they were like, this guy can field right now with the big leagues. He'll hit in time, he'll grow as a hitter, but he is a big league fielder right now. And you saw a couple weeks later, they brought him right up. He turned a double play to end the game last night. He's going to be a special one. So they value and prioritize those things, and they stick with them, and they find enough of a balance. Like I think sometimes you err the other way. Does Cleveland have enough offense? They got a good defense in a lot of spaces, but do they hit enough? No. So you've got to be able to do both. And I think the Mets, they said one thing, but their actions said something different.
So my last question, there's a fan, I missed who it was because there's a lot going on in our live chat on YouTube right now, but there's a fan that said, well, the Mets should just go back to the Brewers front office for the GM or somebody else because clearly the answer is still there. And so I'll go double down even further. Do you think we ever see a situation where an owner like Steve Cohen goes, hold up, for the cost of Jorge Polanco's salary or Luis Roberts' salary this year, I could just make an offer to 30 staff members from another team and be like, all of you are getting 30% raises, come over to me. And most of the people on staffs in general are on these 1 year contracts, right? It's a crazy part of our game where a lot of people don't have really any job security besides the general managers, the people at the top. So do you think there's ever a world where someone goes scorched earth and says, I'm just going to take all of those people and see what happens?
Just raid an entire front office. Yeah. But you know what, though? It all comes down to what the players do, and it's all a guessing game, right? It's all just percentages. I asked Steve Cohen earlier this year about being in the financial world and being able to predict those markets and becoming so crazy rich. And he's like, well, like I was successful like 53% of the time, 54% of the time. It was just that you put down so many bets that you made so much money if you're successful 54% of the time. Baseball, 54% of the time, you're right on the border of the playoffs. So it's really hard to predict these things. And you could bring in the smartest minds in the world, but all of these things, Theo Epstein mentioned to me once, he's like, you can build these teams and everybody has a range of possible outcomes, right? You're just predicting, you're trying to get the right card out of 10,000 cards. And it might be that all these guys have great years, or it might be that this guy gets injured, that guy gets injured, and you wind up with 83 wins. You're looking for, and it's just it blows your mind. It must frustrate the hell out of these guys because the smartest minds in the world can put together the best looking team, but all these variables can still happen to ruin those plans. So, it's there's no one great answer. But I think when you look at an organization, top to bottom, right now, the Dodgers are the standard, obviously, but Milwaukee does the best job. Again, being in Nashville a couple weeks ago, seeing their AAA operation, they've had the same AAA manager, Rick Sweet, since 2013. He's about to next year is going to set the record for most wins in the minor league as a minor league manager. He's incredible as a conduit between what they want in AAA and what they want in the big leagues, and keeping that consistent, keeping that pipeline going. He's kind of an overlooked guy in what Milwaukee does, and that's just one way of saying that this is a team that's really smart analytically, but they also value a guy who's been the minor league manager for 36 years as the main, pathway to the big leagues. That's their last stop on the way to the big leagues. It's this guy who has all the old school wisdom too. So the Brewers do a lot of stuff right that you wouldn't even think of.
Tyler, just in case Rick Sweetie is listening to this, please don't give him any credit. Do not give that old geezer. Don't give him that old geezer any credit. But my question to you is the last one. Do you just wait a little bit longer with the Mets? This didn't happen overnight with the Brewers. Do you wait, or is David Stearns, because all the moves that David Stearns has been making that I feel like has crippled this team, is setting up for the future, not hamstringing this team with 7-8 year contracts. Whether I agree with that or not, he's setting things up for the future. So do you give David Stearns more time, or is the market of New York not allowed to give him more time?
No, you do give him more time, and I have never suggested that. David's a really smart guy. He's a good communicator. I've known him a long time, and a lot of his moves do make a lot of sense. I don't think that the short-term contract thing for pitchers is necessarily bad. I don't think most pitchers, again, unless you're a Hall of Famer, have more than 5 to 7 really highly productive years. And a lot of them are before free agency. So it's just a matter of picking the right guys. So I think David does a lot of stuff right. It hasn't worked out this year. There were things I wouldn't have done, but I do think he has a grasp on what is going to make the team a consistent winner. And I think they're in the right hands, but it's just, like I said, it's just not as easy to say, take a small market winner, bring him, give him more of a payroll, and all of your problems will go away, because money comes with its own set of problems. Look, the Brewers might make more mistakes too if they had access to as many players as a big market team, right? Like, you have more access to more players, there's more possibilities you can make mistakes and then hamstring the rest of your roster. So they do have a little bit of an advantage that way. The Brewers, in smaller markets.
Yeah. Also, Tyler, there was a world where the Dodgers weren't that good, right? They were a mess during the Frank McCourt era many times. And then eventually they get bought, and they weren't racking championships. You had like the platoon era where, it was Farhan Zaidi and Andrew Friedman, and they platooned everything to death. And then they started to get away with that. And really, ultimately, they made some better decisions than it took some time to grow this powerhouse that they created, but also like they have the best player of all time. That was really the icing on the cake. They weren't this juggernaut until they had the best player of all time.
Yeah. Oh, the best thing, the Dodgers, the most impressive thing probably that this Dodgers run is how they went from McCourt to this juggernaut without seemingly, without like having a lull. They spent their way to it, but like they threw a lot of money at it and kept winning, not winning World Series, but they kept winning divisions, kept, keeping the train moving there and keeping fans into it and excited, while having to dig out behind the scenes from all that stuff in the McCourt era. So that was part of the genius of what Friedman was able to do, and Stan Kasten and that whole group when they got in there.
Well, we really enjoyed the combo. We love when you're able to join us. Thanks for doing that, Tyler. And great article. Check out his work there, and many, many more awesome articles in The Athletic from Tyler Kepner. Tyler, great to catch up, man. Good to see you.
All right, fellas. Good seeing you too.
Cheers.
When my puppy Bella has something wrong, I'm not going to go around Googling what to do.
Yeah, Kratz, let's have a better plan. Today's episode is sponsored by the ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program. It offers customizable accident and illness plans that can fit your budget, your lifestyle, and even your pet's particular quirks. Because let's be honest, vet bills can add up fast. ASPCA Pet Health Insurance has been around for almost 30 years and has covered over 1 million pets. And when it's time to submit a claim, it's easy. Just use their app and receive reimbursement for eligible vet bills directly into your bank account so you can get back to focusing on what really matters, your pet. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/foul. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/foul. Again, that's aspcapetinsurance.com/foul. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independent American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance. Oh, we have a little turbulence for your old team. KP, the Braves were swept for the first time this season. Padres needed it more than the Braves. Braves have lost 9 in a row at Petco Park. They've dropped 10 of 13. Whatever. I'm not worried about them. They'll be fine. I actually think they've got some starting pitching coming back. I forgot about Reynaldo Lopez. He returns on a pitch count on Friday. Smith Shawver working his way back. Hurston Waldrop. There's some depth there. They still need a big boy at the top, along with Sale, etc. But KP, what are you seeing from this team lately and your concern meter, not for them making the playoffs, but for them being only 4.5 games clear of the Phillies in the division?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Phillies are a real concern. I'm not concerned about the Braves in the long term, like you mentioned. I think if anyone would have, said where they were at this point of the season, given all the injuries that they had in spring training, especially to their starting pitching staff, and the fact that they have had trouble the last couple of years staying healthy on the position side, and the fact that Acuna has been in and out of the lineup, Drake Baldwin's missed some time. Murphy missed the beginning of the year. He came back for like a week. He's been hurt again. They've kind of just been patching together a pitching rotation, and they've had superstars in and out of their lineup this year. I have no concern. My only concern is I do think the Phillies are here to stay. I think they are kind of like a runaway train right now. As much as it is an advantage to win the division and potentially have a bye in the first round, I think with the amount of pitching that the Braves have coming back, the fact that they have Chris Sale, as their ace, and then just knowing AA, they have the ability to go out and find another ace as well.
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's what he said.
That's what he said.
That's what he said. Well, let's start with the headliner. Shohei Ohtani said he has to get more on the same page with Dalton Rushing. And KP, for anybody, whether you're first day in the bigs or you're 15 years in the bigs, if you heard that from Shohei Ohtani, you'd be like, that hurts. And Rushing was very accountable, basically saying he sucks and he's got to be better about that particular situation. Ohtani giving up 5 earned runs across 10 starts this season with Will Smith catching. 5 earned runs across 10 starts. He's allowed 9 with Rushing behind the plate over the last 3 games. Smith's been out. So KP, you watched many highlights from this one. Tell me what was going on to not have them be on the same page and to get Ohtani to the point that post game, as nice as he is, he did say, hey, we're not on the same page. That's about as mean as you'll get from someone like Shohei.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple, close calls and some pivotal times in the game. Yes, they were a little bit earlier in the game, but they were kind of leverage counts. Runner at third base, Rushing didn't necessarily catch the ball, very cleanly in the zone. Shohei thought it was a pitch worthy of challenging. He went to, challenge it. Rushing was shaking his head. Ultimately, Ohtani was right. There was another scenario in the game where it looked like a two-seam fastball kind of ran away, and Rushing kind of went to chase after it, run scored, and his body language just, wasn't good for a guy who's young, and you got the best player on the planet on the mound. But, I kind of wanted to ask Kratz too, is it, it feels like you have to have a certain type of personality to, be a backup catcher. And I know Rushing right now is the starting catcher because Will Smith there. It just, to me, he's a young kind of budding star who has to kind of play second fiddle to Will Smith. But I mean, do you see that as being a challenge? Because typically the backup catcher is a guy that isn't really known by the baseball world. He kind of just does his job. He can be a little bit of a punching bag for the starting pitching. He's kind of like a yes man. He'll take the blame. He would be the first guy to answer questions, be like, that's on me, not on Shohei. But it feels like there's a challenge when you do have a young kid who's coming up, who's very confident in his ability. He's very emotional. Am I seeing this correctly, Kratzy?
Spot on. You're spot on. You're spot on with it. And it's nothing against Dalton Rushing. Every player should think they are the starting catcher. And right now on this team, for the next, I think, 9 more years, Will Smith is a starting catcher. He has that contract that's going to give that to him. And the Dodgers chose to get rid of Austin Barnes and go with Dalton Rushing. Is Dalton Rushing a better catcher? Absolutely. Is Austin Barnes valuable to the team? Absolutely. So that was where my whole contradiction from what they were doing before, where they called Dalton Rushing up to be the backup, didn't know how it was going to go. I mean, the dude was on fire offensively. And so he was adding so much value to this team. For this to come out, have any other pitchers come out and said, oh, I can't throw to Dalton Rushing? No. Are other pitchers doing really well? Yes. So to me, it's just a one pitcher to that catcher, and there is pressure. I've caught aces. I've caught future Hall of Famers that are now currently Hall of Famers, and it's intimidating. As the backup catcher, you watch, okay, the starter caught this guy. He throws to him all the time. Bang, starter goes down. Now you're the guy that has to step in and catch, and it's not easy. And the whole challenging it and everything, if that play happens and Robleski's on the mound, it's way different feeling than it is when Shohei Ohtani's on the mound and then he says, yes, I want to challenge it. And then you're wrong and you're like, oh my gosh, this is just compounding. For me, I love what the Dodgers did. A lot of the veterans put their arm around him, helped him out. It's because they're all with him in those situations. And yes, you're exactly right. But KP, when you're watching it, what's your view of backup catchers when you were on the teams that you were on, the best backup catchers when you were on those teams?
Great teammates, fly under the radar. I mean, maybe we might be the only guy who knows their name. Like the baseball world doesn't know their name. They fly under the radar, and they're just students of the game. Like they either kind of latch on with one starting, pitcher, gives, your starter a day off every 4 days, and he has a really good working relationship with one guy. And from everything that I've understood, and I could be wrong in this, Kratzy, but when you're a good backup catcher, you are just trying to get on the same page with that starting pitcher. You're trying to get him through that game. You're trying to put up zeros. Whatever you do offensively is a bonus. Like, you're up against the 8 ball because you're playing once every 5 days. More than likely, you're probably going against the other guy's ace. I feel like that's how it always happens for a backup catcher. But yeah, I mean, and some of those guys probably believe that they were more than a backup catcher and that and not to say you shouldn't be confident in your ability, but you also have to understand your role in this situation. And right now he's the starting catcher. And I've seen it with other teams when a starter goes down and the backup comes in and he's got to play every day. There is this element of potentially being overexposed offensively, pitch framing, whatever, game calling, relationships with them. Some guys are just better suited for kind of, it's almost like that sprint. You go in once every 5 days and you could just play with your hair on fire and you have it. But when you have to do that every single day, when the starter's out, you get exposed a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say Dalton Rushing, again, is a starting catcher. And I think he should be a starting catcher. And so I think this is different than talking about me. For me, the one characteristic that you didn't say about a backup catcher is he has to be supremely confident, not intimidated, and show none of that. And I think, I'm not saying Dalton Rushing doesn't do that. I'm saying as a backup catcher, just in general, you have to understand that when the starter comes back, you're not going to be in there. It doesn't mean you're not very good. It just means he's better than you are, and you still have to be confident in what you can do. And I think there's value in that as a veteran backup, that it adds to teams, because catching is really the only position. I don't care what people say about platooning. Catching is the only position where you have to get elite production from two guys as a group. If you were AJ Pierzynski's backup catcher, you really got to do very little. You got to play about 25 games. If you are, I'm trying to think, they cut down Will Smith's games. So, maybe they want him to catch about 110, 120 games. So now you got to have a guy that can catch 50 games. And so it's different for each team, but you need to try to get 162 games out of two guys. And that doesn't happen at any other position. Think about that across the game. It doesn't happen at any other position, even platoons. This is why it's crazy. And I think a lot of starting catchers appreciate what the backup does on really good teams, because they are one in the same, because they're always talking, hey, last time I caught this guy, last time I caught Shohei, this is what I saw from him. Make sure you're doing this. And as a backup, that is invaluable. And the one last thing I had to say about backups is if you bring in a superstar pitcher and you say, oh, well, I need him to catch this guy. What? Like, to me, that was always one of the things that and Joe Maddon's coming on, and he had this case actually. Why do I pay $150 million to a superstar pitcher, but he needs this backup to catch him? In my opinion, the best backups get the most out of 4s and 5s in your rotation, and you let the starter catch the best pitchers, because those are the guys that, they should be able to call their own game. And I have no problem with Shohei saying, you know what, I'm going to hit the little pitch comm thing right now, and we'll get through it, and we'll slowly learn for the next start, which Dalton Rushing is going to be out there for.
Great back and forth. Let's bring this to Joe Maddon, among other topics. He'll join us next. Hey, we're looking at some upcoming games over the next couple of days. SeatGeek helping us out. First off, we can show this tweet about the Boston Red Sox flight issues leading to an 8 or 9 a.m. home arrival for a 7 o'clock game, KP, against the best pitcher in the American League right now in Cam Schlittler. Good luck with that.
It might be the best thing for him. You don't have a whole lot of time to prepare. You're just strictly on adrenaline. But I do believe when something like this happens and you want the best players to go out there and perform the best, I do believe that there's a way that the league could potentially step in and just say play a doubleheader tomorrow, because obviously that's something out of the hands of the players and the organization. Sometimes things like that happen, and it's just not, entirely fair.
I would say the league will not do that, because they do not ever want to cause because then teams will be like, oh, our flight got in late, and then people will manipulate it. My thing, it's called the minor leagues. They're going to have to suck it up. And to me, I don't think it affects tonight as much as it'll affect tomorrow night. It is how I always felt like those tough travels in the minor leagues. That's how it affects it. But Wilson might be getting a call from the front office too and be like, Delta is one of our sponsors. Maybe don't say thanks, Delta.
Unless you really mean thanks. Maybe they really helped to pick you up. I'm kidding. There was definitely sarcasm in that tweet. So on the upcoming games topic this weekend, and some of this is starting already, right, with Thursday games. You have Phillies and Mets. You have the Yankees, Red Sox, like I just mentioned. That's a 4-gamer. The Dodgers and Padres, including a Friday night Roki Sasaki versus Walker Buehler matchup that I think is intriguing if you want to grab a ticket for that. In Detroit, it's the Astros and the Tigers. Reds and Pirates, who both have been like meh lately, and you got to see if they stay in the wild card race, Nationals and Orioles, which is a much better matchup, I think, than anticipated heading into the year because the Nats are playing okay, although it's a roller coaster ride when you follow them. Rangers, Blue Jays, Mariners, Guardians is good. There's really good matchups this weekend. So go grab a ticket. Why don't you? Use code Territory10 for 10% off of that MLB ticket on SeatGeek. 10% off with promo code Territory10. Click the link in the description to download the app. Have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you to SeatGeek for helping us look ahead at the schedule every single day on FT. And also coming up next on the schedule here on this show, Joe Maddon will join us. Ooh, that's the good stuff right there. World Series winning manager Joe Maddon joining us for a Vintage Joe segment. And I love every single bit of that, Joe, as I'm sure you do too, with the camper and the whole deal. Great to see you. How you been? And also, were you catching some of our prior conversation about catching?
Yes, that was a 76. Actually, it's a 76 Dodge van. Some of that looked more like a Volkswagen. I was catching part of the conversation. I'm in Pennsylvania. I've already played 18 holes this morning. I got to go cut the grass on this rather large lawn after we get done, and then eventually pick my kids up tomorrow at the airport. So it's all been good stuff.
Good, life's good. So what do you think about this?
No.
What's
you don't need to cut your grass before Scott gets to his question.
Go ahead.
You don't need to cut your grass. Come on, that's allergies. That's
tractor.
Allergens. You don't need that.
I just bought a tractor. I bought a Simplicity tractor. It's so much fun. It's about 100-yard long space, maybe 40 yards wide. It's a place I just bought to Airbnb. I'm having a great time. I want to stripe it out like an infield or an outfield. This tractor is capable of doing that. So it's actually kind of cathartic, and it's fun, and it's about 5-6 o'clock tonight. It's gonna be nice and cool. So it's a perfect way to end your day.
Do you go circles or do you go stripes? Do you go angled stripes? Because I do the same thing. Yeah. I love mowing my own yard.
So there you go. I'm starting out with straight up stripes. The grass was out of control. I just bought the place, so I'm getting it back in control. So we're going like regular, like crisscross stripes. Eventually, I want to go angular. I've done a couple circles, but I'm getting the grass under control. It was totally a mess. It was like a bad hairdo for a long period of time, and the guy that had it before me did not take care of it. So I'm getting it back in shape slowly, but it's looking really good right now.
And I know KP loves hearing about this too. KP does some serious work.
This is music.
I love gardening.
This is music to my ears. This is music to my ears. Hey, Joe, I got a question for you. Since
yes, sir,
you are a manager that has taken teams, obviously winning World Series into the World Series. I got a question about the Blue Jays. Is a team that didn't have a ton of expectations last year getting to Game 7 of the World Series, and then coming back the next year with having a bullseye on their back? Is that a real thing?
I actually wrote all that stuff down because that was given that possibly being a topic today. I remember the 2002 Angels. We won the World Series in 2002. Here comes 2003, and man, everything was just off right up until about the All-Star break. I think the shorter off season, all the platitudes, you think you're kind of cool, and then it's not like you expect things just to happen overnight or there's going to be come your way easily. However, you're just throwing off your normal patterns. And it's not to say that you don't want to win or you don't care about, not at all. But the expectations are different. The target is a little bit larger, but nevertheless, it's just a different vibe. That's why I've been so impressed historically, like with the Yankees as an example, and more present tense with the Dodgers, where you're able to see it with first-time eyes, feel first-time passion on an annual basis. When you have never done it before and all of a sudden you do, then you satiate those your first time eyes and your first time passion. The Michael Jordans of the world, the Larry Birds of the world, the Derek Jeters in that group of the world, are really the Tom Brady's of the world. These are different animals where you can recreate that feel of first time passion annually. And I think that's something that you need a freak normally within your group to get that out of the group. And again, not to denigrate the Blue Jays, I'm just saying what I think happens. So they'll get back. They're slowly getting back. They'll probably make some kind of a decent run as we get closer to the end. But that's how I view it. You have to be able to recreate these first-time vibes within your psyche, within you. Not easy to do, but the guys that can, those are the dudes you want on your team.
And Joe, do you think that's better suited coming from a player, or is that someone better suited like someone in your position?
Well, someone in my position tries to do it all the time. I mean, annually, I always challenge myself every year to, for the first meeting with the pitchers and the catchers and the first meeting with the position players to bring forth the message that I thought was pertinent. I thought it could give us something to, work with, hold on to, direction on an annual basis. And that for me, it never could be the same. I had to always sit down, pretty much grind it out in January. I used to talk to Ken Ravizza, the great sports mental skills psychiatrist for years, and I would go over this stuff to try to bring this forth. And this message was something you want this refrain to be utilized the entire season as you break for the season, maybe around the All-Star break, et cetera. So for me, this is my attempt. Now, that's one thing, and it does carry weight, no question. But when you were talking about the backup catcher role, and I was thinking about David Ross, who did catch the star, as opposed to what Erik was talking about there. But that does happen, and David had that kind of jack. David would meet players on the top step of the dugout walking in if they had done something wrong on the field. I mean, it was wonderful. So when you have those kind of people within your group, I think peer pressure is probably the most significant pressure that can be brought to bear on a daily basis, even more so than managerial or coach pressure.
So is it more mental or is it more physical when a team goes, like KP was saying, and because the physical is whatever, they have that hangover. They played a lot of games. They pitched a lot of innings. What do you think is more prevalent that will cause a downfall for a team the next season?
Well, honestly, it could be both. I mean, if there's that there's less time for injuries to heal also from the previous year. That was one thing that I felt when I first experienced it with the Angels in 2002. Then we went with the Rays in 2009. And then, of course, the Cubs did repeat to the NLCS in 2017. So you're normally going to be faced with some kind of physical distress with certain guys. Again, they'd have less time to heal. And I think that is pertinent. However, I think it's more of a mental grind. I do. I think that, again, giving an opportunity to do it again, if we were to win a World Series as an example, I would definitely make sure that off season, as we got like maybe December, January, really start getting in touch with guys to reemphasize. Listen, I trust you guys always. Absolutely, I trust you guys. But I want you to think about this. As we get to camp, you might be physically still getting over some stuff, but we really need to get the minds in order more quickly this year. You could practice mechanics all you want physically, but I think the mental mechanics are really what controls success, whether it's a physical act or just an act in general. As a duty, as a coach, as a manager, I have to have my mental stuff together for me to be pertinent to this particular group of guys, to do my job in a way that's good, that's going to matter in a positive way. So I think it's a little bit of a both double-edged kind of a thing. Some guys are overcoming injuries with less time, but I think they're all, to a certain extent, overcoming this mental grind that you have to really put it in gear and push yourself to the point you get back into that flow state. And my line was, treat it, see it with first-time eyes, feel with first-time passion. And if you could at least think about that, that might motivate you in that direction.
I love that. Joe, teams you think that's going to be busiest at the trade deadline? And I guess my second part to that question is, you mentioned 2002 with the Angels, 2009 Tampa, and then, in Chicago. How has the manager's role changed in your opinion, in terms of the trade deadline, in terms of how active a manager has in any input when it comes to the trade deadline?
I would say, when I first began in 2006, we had very little input. I think the guys back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, up to the 90s to a certain degree, had a lot of impact. At that point, the manager was more autonomous. The manager really had more jack than the general manager in a lot of ways. I mean, if there was a decision to be made, a player to be acquired, a lot of times it was motivated through the manager and the coaching staff of the major league team, which I thought was wrong. I always thought that was wrong because we don't get to see everybody every day, whereas a scout can. We see when the team plays against us, so we could be jaded or influenced by a performance over a 3 or 4 game series where these other guys get to see them more completely. So I think right now, managers, coaches should not be part of that, quite frankly, because you should be part of it only when you're asked, okay, we're considering this. Of course, you can make a suggestion. Of course, I'm not saying that, but normally it's the player's name is brought to you. And what do you think of this guy? What do you know about this guy? And that's really where the research would be more pertinent to me. Personality, makeup. What's he like in the clubhouse? Those are the kind of things that I would want to know. I mean, physical determination, evaluation of skills. That to me is a scout's job. And I was a scout, and I know the difference between that and managing. And you have to understand there's a lot of bias involved when it comes to managers and coaches. They'll see guys that they like based, again, on a short-term window, and all of a sudden there's a bias developed in the favor of that guy or even against that guy. Something that they saw, they didn't like, and then all of a sudden, we don't dig on this guy, even though this is the right guy to be acquired in this moment. So I don't like managers and coaches being part of this acquisition process. We don't have enough information. We don't see these guys enough. Our focus needs to be right here with this particular team here and now. And I'll give you all you want to know about my 25, 26-man roster. Absolutely, I've got very strong feelings right there. But the guys that are not in the room, I don't have nearly the same kind of ability or confidence to give you a really strong opinion.
But your really strong opinion on those 25 when you manage, 25 guys will dictate what the people who are going to acquire the talent do. Is that a hard conversation, or is that as easy as going to a player and saying, man, you've just been doing so well for us, knowing that 23rd, 24th, and 25th man are going to be replaced with much better talent?
Listen, for me, I want to say this the right way. It's not difficult because I want on a daily basis to be absolutely upfront and honest with all my guys. Another axiom of mine is like, if I tell you the truth, you might not like me for a week or 10 days, but if I lie to you, you're going to hate me forever. So you're a professional. You've been a great professional. Both of you guys have. You always wanted to hear it straight up. You might not have liked it. You might have disagreed with it. You might have got pissed off. You might have went to some other guys and said, you believe what he said to me? But at the end of a week or 10 days, you might come back and say, yeah, he was right, or at least he told me the truth. So that's the only way to get through this. So these last 3 guys on the roster, that's another thing the rest of the roster has to understand or see. They're being replaced by talent that's better than them. I've been in a situation way back with the Angels in the mid-'90s. We replaced D. Sarcini gets hurt. And we go out and get Chico Lind. And Chico was just not as good as he had been. And we also had Rex Hudler on that team and Spike Owen, who could have taken the place at second base after D-Sar got hurt and Damian Easley moved to shortstop. I'm here to tell you, man, that's not good for the team. When you bring in talent that the group, especially the veteran group, already knows, we already got that here. So if you bring people in there that everybody can see easily is better than what we have, no problem about this 23, 24, 25, 26. But if you bring dudes in there that you can see easily, hey, we already had that in the room. That's where it could get kind of tricky. And the guys coming in really need to perform, because if they don't, that's where things could go sideways. Whereas your compass was pointing north and now it's going east and west, heading south.
All right, I want to take you to the Ohtani-Rushing situation from last night. Are you up to date on it? Did you see the interaction and everything?
I'm up to date because Claudia did a wonderful job of describing it to me. So that's why I'm up to date.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, so you have a young catcher who, in my opinion, will be a starting catcher one day, but he's in a backup role, and Will Smith is out of there. Is it fair, the criticism that he's getting from people outside of the organization, or is it one of those things that only the team knows, and Ohtani coming out and saying something means that it's gotten to DEFCON 6?
Right. The people outside the organization, as you suggested, really don't know. And I don't really care what people may say outside of the group, outside of the circled wagons. I care a lot about what's being said within the circled wagons. First of all, with Shohei, it's hard for me to believe that he's not already working on the solution to this. For me, the solution to this is Shohei, Dalton, in room, pitching coach, manager, sit there, let's talk through this. That's it. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. The Shohei, I even learned to not ask him or tell him what to do during the game. I asked him to walk Matt Olson one time, and he wagged his finger at me in the dugout, but he did go ahead and do it. And then sure enough, I did it later in the game. Then I looked up his numbers against the guy afterwards. He had struck him out like 10 out of 14 times. He knew what he was doing. Shohei knows what he's doing. So it makes the catcher's job easier. Just follow him. I would get them in a room. I would talk about it just very matter-of-factly again. And of course, Shohei needs to be in charge of this situation. He's very good at it. So this is another situation. There's been others, the Devers situation recently, all this stuff, Chisholm, with a blow pop in his mouth and on the infield. A lot of these things are just a product of social media. Listen, it's a bad look, bad optics. No, not disagreeing, but they get way more attention than they deserve. This is the kind of stuff when it wasn't as prevalent to be these kind of things being discussed, that stuff would have been handled in the locker room. Chisholm would have been told, listen, brother, never do that again. I never want to see you walk out there like that again. This kid here, listen, if Shohei wants to do something, that's how it's going to be. And if we'll sit down and we'll talk to him, and it's going to be all worked out. And with Devers, of course he was being obstinate, not coming off the field. I don't care what he says. That's what I saw too. These are the kind of things that should, through conversation, go away very quickly. You do not give them any more impetus than they absolutely need. And furthermore, I want people to start watching the game. I watch cutoffs and relays. I watch first to third running. I watch a two-strike approach at the plate. To talk about these superfluous things really bothers me because that's everybody's glommed onto. Talk about the bullpens, talk about the game, but this other stuff is ancillary and should be handled among the group, put away within minutes. You attack it quickly and it goes away.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about bullpen. What do you think the right way to kind of manage a bullpen is? And I love asking, former managers on here, is the game missing out by not having a, long relief guy in the bullpen? What happened to the long relief guy, and how valuable was a long relief guy in your 10 years as a manager? And then lastly, too, the fact that you don't have any options in the bullpen anymore. You're stacking your bullpen with pretty much set up guys that have no options.
Right. Yeah, it's really it's an interesting situation. First of all, I think in order to solve all these problems, teach and permit your starters to pitch more deeply into a game. That's A. I mean, the fact that you're constantly pulling guys with 4 2/3 innings with a decent number of pitches thrown, meaning not that many, and you constantly want to hand the game over to velocity at the end of the ball game. To me, I mean, look, everybody's 500. Look at run differentials right now. The only league with run differential in a positive primarily is the National League, and the American League has very few. So why is this method so interesting and wonderful and good? It's just accepted right now. It's being promoted right now. That doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. In order to solve a lot of these problems with the bullpen, teach your starters to go more deeply into the game. That starts in the minor league level. And it's not a 100-pitch exercise either. Guys are going to still get hurt. The more you attempt to teach to throw 100 miles an hour, where you're throwing, as hard as you possibly can against the wall, and there's no real pitching being taught right here. That's where the injury is. Why are we constantly... It's always being blamed on the number of pitches thrown, where I think that is very insignificant compared to methods by which the ball is being thrown. So let's teach guys to pitch the third time through the batting order, give them that opportunity in the minor leagues. You're going to take less stress off of your bullpen arms, and then you're going to be able to parcel these guys out in a way that you're not going to beat them up by the end of the season. They're all dead meat, or they only have a 2-year lifespan because they've thrown so darn much. So it starts with starting pitching. Starting pitching to me was always the engine that drove it. That drives the entire engine of your major league team. The starting pitching it's like a good offensive line. When you got those guys, man, a lot of other things just start to fall in place. So get back to that. Let's really nurture and support and build starters that know how to pitch the third time through. Take some of the heat off the bullpen guys. And then from there, yeah, the long man saves you for days. I mean, that means these other guys, and that's normally in a deficit. It's not normally in a positive game where you have a big lead, unless it's a really big lead, but it's normally a deficit where this guy comes out there, saves everybody for at least a day, and all of a sudden, guys come back the next day and they're totally refreshed and they're good for an inning, 2 innings, or maybe 2 days in a row. So I think, start with starting pitching to answer a lot of these questions in order to get this all in a working order where you have a chance. I still believe like 6, 7 guys maybe should be capable of 1,000 innings annually. We did that with the Rays. That was the one thing I talked about every camp. I looked at the starters and said, I want 1,000 innings out of the starting pitching. Why is that such an impossible task anymore?
Because it's not taught, exactly like you said.
Right.
They have this
Yeah.
predisposed idea of what hurts players. You mentioned
right.
briefly the Devers situation. And I know you communicate to your players ahead of time, so you feel like you have a pulse of what kind of player is going to react to certain things.
Right.
In that situation, we just had Jim Bowden on, and he said he would have suspended Devers for the way he treated his manager in the moment. Do you feel like that's too harsh? Do you feel like as a manager you would have handled it differently?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in suspensions like that. Jose Guillen back in the day with the Angels with Soch, and I was all for it. But there was a helmet involved in that too that I didn't like. So that's different. I mean, that was insubordinate. In spite of his commentary afterwards, it's just it's dissembling. He's just going to provide an answer that was considered and talked about. Hey, listen, when the press comes in afterwards, we're gonna say this in order to diffuse the whole thing. That's how it works, as you know. So that, to me, I don't know that I would have suspended him for that, but definitely he would have been in my office immediately after that. And it would have been because I've had that too, and that was some really good players. Something happens on the field, like I've had it in a dugout, and I don't mind saying Joel Peralta, who I absolutely love, said something to me in a dugout, and I mean in between innings in Baltimore, and that was it. We're going to talk about it right here in front of everybody right now because you brought it to me first, all right? And if Devers is walking off the field, if the manager wants to just jump his ship right there, there's nothing wrong with that either, not at all, or at least in the tunnel at the most. So I think by nipping it in the bud quickly, you could avoid the suspension. Maybe possibly him addressing the team. That might not be that's way more significant to me than a suspension. It's a more difficult moment for a human being to get up in front of the group and be remorseful and say, listen, man, I screwed up. I won't do that again. I embarrassed the manager. I embarrassed all of us. I embarrassed myself. I'll never do that. I'll never do that again. That to me would be more significant than the potential to suspend him a bit.
So that's the part 2 of this. We talked about Rushing and how, he's talking about a light situation right after the game and just laying it out, right? And then Rafi's case, he doesn't talk for 3 days. And then I don't know if you caught the quotes, but yeah, so this happened on Sunday. He speaks not on Sunday, not on Monday, but on Tuesday. And then I'll paraphrase, but I'm not off here, Joe. The key part what he was saying is that the media overblows things, and that's why he doesn't talk to them. So and he did say that he apologized behind the scenes, so you got a little bit of that. But, it felt dirty because there was another message that came out of it. My question for you is, how do you handle that? How does an organization handle that? Like, you got to let the players say whatever they want, but do you take them behind the scenes and say, this is not how we conduct things with people? Because it's not just the media. When you say overblown, now you're kind of talking about social media, which is fans.
Are you an avid reader? Have you been an avid reader throughout your existence?
Of books, more so when I was a kid.
Books,
of articles. Books,
okay.
tons.
Books, I'm talking
tons
about,
up to,
okay.
Yeah.
But then all the Clancy stuff, Jack Ryan, protagonist, and all the Jack
Ken
Ryan.
Follett
And
I'm a Ken Follett guy.
I love Ken Follett. Okay, brother. Okay, Pillars of the Earth, one of my favorite books of all time. World Without End, number 2. I could go on and on about him. But Jack Ryan, in Clear and Present Danger, there's that situation early on where there's a drug bust in the Caribbean and it goes bad, and the guy's killed on the boat, and he happens to be a friend of the President of the United States. And all the spin doctors come out and, hey, Mr. President, you cannot mention that he's a good friend or he's a friend. He's just an acquaintance that bumped into him once in a while, whatever. And Jack Ryan's sitting in the room right there observing all this. And finally they say, Jack, what do you think about this? And he says, well, sorry, Mr. President. And again, I'm paraphrasing. But no, I believe he wasn't just a friend of yours. He was one of your best friends. And I'm, very deeply sorry for this, and we're, going to look into it a little bit more. But this guy was a really good friend of mine. The moment you run towards the issue and absolutely blow it out of the water with honesty, it goes away. The more you try to hide this, the more people are going to dig, and the more they're going to want to come out with whatever. And then then it becomes spun in a way that can get out of control. So Rick Vaughn in Tampa Bay was my media guy. RV would come in and something would happen. And I'd say, we're going Jack Ryan tonight. We're going Jack Ryan. And he knew that meant straightforward, no dissembling. We're not tap dancing around this. Because a lot of times you'd get from the front office, they want to tap dance a little bit because you don't want things getting out because it may hurt trade value, whatever. I don't like to tap dance because it's when you say exactly what went on, and there's times when you can't, and you would say, listen, this is what I can tell you. There's a certain component of this I can't tell you for reasons I don't want to discuss with you. But that would also be, for me, honest and truth. But I'm going to tell you what I can, and it's going to be straightforward. And then she goes away, period. And you have to stop thinking about it. You can't stop thinking about it. So I would have my Jack Ryan. You go Jack Ryan. You tell him the complete truth. And then it has a greater opportunity to go away and dissolve a lot more quickly than if you try to hide it and spin it a bit.
That's really good. See, that's the insight I was looking for, is how does this get handled internally? And really appreciate the insight here, Joe. We always love catching up with you. It's good to see you. And then actually on our way out with your book of Joe, with you and Tom Verducci, I heard, and I hit every episode sometimes a few days late, but Travis Bazzana was just on the show.
Yeah, he was great.
Nice.
He would listen to him. I mean, you talk about a young kid that understands hitting. Oh my God. I mean, I had to tell him at one point, listen, I'm not normally that agreeable, but I said, I really like what you say and how you say it to Travis. His breakdown was spectacular. You could expect this kid to be good for a long period of time. There's a lot of humility, a lot of sincere gratitude, plus a ton of skill. Check it out. His breakdown of his hitting mechanics mentally and physically are outstanding.
I've heard that. Yeah. Doing things in the minors that were blowing their minds. And then quickly he's up in the majors doing that, looking like he's a veteran and like he's been in there for a long time. So everyone listen to it. When you get a chance, catch Travis Bazzana on Book of Joe. Joe, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day and cut up some nice grass for us, please. I'm going to go do it. And your conversation was great before I got here. I really appreciated that. That was a great setup for me. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. It's been great. Appreciate you. Talk soon, Joe. Be well. See you, KP. See you, Erik. See you guys. Bye. Peace. Kratz Mint Mobile plans, still just $15 a month.
And you're getting a ton from that $15.
That's right. And we've talked about this for a while. It hasn't changed. It's still all there for you. I'm talking about unlimited talk, text, and data, fast, reliable coverage on the nation's largest 5G network. Oh, and an award-winning care team. Mint Mobile has it all for $15 a month. You can even bring your current phone and your number, choose from 3, 6, or 12-month plans. Say goodbye to a monthly bill. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Oh, this is so timely. Kratz, Pedro Martinez yesterday said, I'm a better gardener than I was a pitcher. The only thing I enjoyed more than working my garden was probably protecting one of my teammates, taking pride in it. and doing it right, a fan was like, dude, with all due respect, there's no way you are a top 5 gardener of all time. And I'll take the other angle. Pedro, you were a really good pitcher. If you take your percentile of how good you are in human history at throwing and spinning a baseball versus your percentile of how good you are at gardening, I'll take the pitching advantage. I think as good as you think you are, you were better on the mound.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. But he probably didn't think he was as good. Like there's a confidence, but then there's also like you're holding yourself to a high standard. And maybe in gardening, he's like, I am not once killing a tomato plant. I wonder if he's a vegetable gardener or if he's like a flower gardener, because they're different, 2 different kinds. I delve into the vegetable gardening part. I try to grow everything that makes salsa. That's what I try to grow.
I love that. It would also, like, how do you rank who the best gardeners are? Are you looking for like the all-time gardens, or are those gardens, they have a larger payroll and there's no cap on them, so it's kind of difficult to weigh that? Like, how do we find out who the best gardeners are?
Success rate. How many plants do you kill? What are you getting out of the plants that you're like? Are your flowers just terrific every year? Are your perennials better than your annuals that you're buying? Like all that. It's a lot. It's like war. We don't know what goes into it.
So you're a rate stats guy on gardening. Got it.
Yep.
It is Miller time, and it is time for Light Takes with KP Kevin Pillar, running through, I'll call this, KP, light trades. Now, they might be impactful, and we're going to focus on the Toronto Blue Jays, but fans might not get the big money man Tarek Skubal coming through, and you might say, hold up. I have a few deals that might add up to something very big for a Blue Jays team that was inches away from a World Series title. What do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take their playbook from last year, and I'm looking, they acquired Shane Bieber, who hadn't even pitched in the major leagues yet. He was still coming back from a rehab assignment. They went out and got Louis Varland, who was a fairly unknown commodity in terms of, pitching out of the Minnesota bullpen, and has become their closer in addition to Ty France. They made a couple other moves too, trading Will Wagner for Brandon Valenzuela, who's ended up being just who's been absolute just fine for them this year. You talk about the backup catcher, the starting catcher, the fact that Valenzuela has been able to was able to step up and be that catcher while Kirk was out. Now he's kind of fallen back into that, backup role. And Kratz, you talked about having 2 guys that could cover 162 games a year. The Blue Jays definitely have that. So I'm going to go with some under the radar moves a little bit. AJ Minter, I know this year he's coming back from injury. He had a torn lat last year, but this guy's playoff tested, World Series tested. The Blue Jays right now are only implementing one left-handed arm in the bullpen, and Mason Fluharty, and he leads Major League Baseball in appearances this year. So adding a left-handed, high leverage reliever in AJ Minter is exactly what the Blue Jays would need. My cost would probably be, the Blue Jays' top catching prospect now that they don't really need another catcher. And it seems like the Mets could probably use another catcher in their lineup. So it's going to cost them Edward Duran. Lane Thomas, the Blue Jays right now, I think, are like 3rd or 4th, have the 4th lowest OPS and batting average against left-handed starters this year. So getting a guy like Lane Thomas who can play all 3 outfield positions, mostly the corners, you mix and match him in, you kind of platoon him with, a Miles Straw, and have a little bit more right-handed hitting depth off your bench. A cost for a guy like that on a team in Kansas City that's not really going anywhere would just be kind of a mid-tier outfield prospect. Clearly, the Blue Jays have a ton of outfield depth. The reason Yohendrick Pinango is no longer in the big leagues is because they have an abundance of depth in the outfield already. And then an old friend, Robbie Ray, you talk about fire sale coming here soon with the Giants. Bring back an old friend who had always been a really good pitcher with a ton of upside, but then a guy who was able to go out and win the Cy Young. Yes, it was the shortened season, whatever. He still won a Cy Young. You talk about the importance of a pitching coach and maybe the right pitching coach, getting Robbie Ray back with a guy like Pete Walker kind of regaining form. And I was looking at his numbers. He has a 3.7 ERA right now, 80 strikeouts. Give him kind of a lower mid-tier left-handed pitching prospect and Javid Coleman.
I love it. I love it because I think these trades, I think you may be overpaid for Lane Thomas with a number 14 prospect. I'm not going to argue that. It shows what the Blue Jays need. The Blue Jays' needs are pretty much in-house. This is the team. They built this team to win, and it has to be these guys. It has to be Gausman and Cease at the top of the rotation. It has to be the stars from this team stepping up and doing the best. Kirk's back. Guerrero's back. So to me, I love these trades, and it may be boring for Blue Jays fans, but the answers are already on the roster.
Yeah, aside from maybe going out and getting a frontline starter like a Tarek Skubal, which in my opinion is not something that the Blue Jays need. I mean, I guess every team could use a Tarek Skubal, but at what cost? When you think about a 3-game series or even a 5-game series, if you can run out Kevin Gausman, Dylan Cease, Trey Yesavage, and then you pick who your hottest pitcher is between, let's say, a Robbie Ray, if you're able to acquire someone like that, or a Patrick Corbin, or a healthy Max Scherzer, or a Shane Bieber. They're in a good position. Adding kind of pieces around, like you mentioned, they have all the pieces in-house. Now you're just kind of adding supplemental pieces, a second proven left-handed arm out of the bullpen. They do have Adam Macko, who, in my opinion, pitched really well when he was up there. I believe he deserves to be there. But when you have these roster constructions where you don't have a ton of options, sometimes you become the odd man out. If the playoff series was started today, is Adam Macko probably on the roster? Probably, because I don't believe the Blue Jays can get by in a postseason series having one left-handed reliever in the bullpen. And then you just talk about supplemental pieces, Lane Thomas being able just to add a little bit more depth, whether it's a pinch hitting off a left-handed reliever in the middle of a game or starting a game against one of these top-tier left-handed pitching. It's exactly what the Blue Jays need to do. If history kind of repeats itself about, they didn't go out and make any really sexy moves last year. I mean, Shane Bieber is a sexy name, but he's a guy who, coming off Tommy John, hadn't even got back to the big leagues yet. They did their homework. They knew that he would eventually come back, and he pitched really meaningful innings for him down the stretch last year. They didn't go out and acquire the sexy name. They just did exactly what they needed to do. They knew they had the pieces in-house. They just needed to kind of add supplemental pieces. And this list right here, I think, would be an A+, trade deadline for them.
There's a lot to like here. So, yeah, Minter's a nice piece. Let me start here on the bullpen, just because if you're a Blue Jays fan, you do want to dare to dream. I mean, any team could use an Aroldis Chapman or something like that. Did you feel like last year at times you were looking for that one extra high leverage guy? I mean, what team can say they're not looking for something like that? And I know Varland's been so nasty, but whether it's Chapman or someone else that realistically could be available, dare to dream. You're going to have to give up a lot more than prospects that are in like the 10 to 20 something range on the board, right? It's going to be a top 10 prospect to get someone like Chapman.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't use an Aroldis Chapman in their bullpen? If there is a high leverage reliever out there, absolutely. But that is probably the biggest commodity amongst teams that are trying to go for it, is they are looking for back end leverage guys in the bullpen. And Chapman, with everything that kind of Boston's been going through this year as a team, he's going to be a hot commodity. The bidding war is going to be very high for him. Is it something that the Blue Jays could absolutely use? Sure. Would it be more of a luxury? In my opinion, yes, because I do believe, look at the stats right now. It's Louis Varland, Mason Miller. Those two guys have the best ERAs in baseball out of the bullpen right now. I think by making this kind of mid-tier move last year, what they didn't know is that they were going to get their, closer of the future, in which they did. Adding a guy like AJ Minter, having a guy like, Tyler Rogers, potentially Yimi Garcia is going to come back at some point. I know his kind of rehab is dragged on a little bit too, but when healthy, that guy is also a very high leverage arm out of the bullpen. I'm trying to think, there's always going to be some, teams down these next couple of weeks before the trade deadline that are going to be sellers. Could the Blue Jays go out and find a high leverage arm that isn't at maybe the price point of a Aroldis Chapman? Then sure, go ahead and find him.
And my last point here on the trade back and forth, I think the one that you might get picked at the most, and I love the Robbie Ray edition, is the return there where and I don't know a lot about Javen Coleman, but a guy who's a number 29 rated prospect, but Robbie Ray is being paid a lot of money. So if the Blue Jays are willing to take on all of that money, that's where you do have an advantage against some teams that will try and push back and say, hey, San Francisco, you take half the contract for the rest of the season, eat that, and I'll give you a prospect that's more like top 15 or something like that. But this is where the Blue Jays can dance a little bit.
Yeah, let's be real honest, Scott Kratzy. Claude texted me about 7:30 this morning asking me to come up with this list. I'm not the expert in the Blue Jays. I'm not the expert in the Blue Jays minor league system. And how often do you see 1-for-1 trades right here? I just kind of looked at AJ Minter on the Mets, what kind of position need, what they kind of need in return. I saw a catcher. Obviously, when it comes to Lane Thomas and Blaine, maybe the 14th ranked prospect's a little bit high, but I also know kind of the depth of the outfield that the Blue Jays have, especially, and I know he's a switch hitting outfielder, but in terms of left-handed hitting outfielders, I mean, that's an abundance of guys that they do have right now. So it was like, okay, I went there, he's somewhat close to the major leagues, but not major league ready. And then obviously, like you said, Robbie Ray's making a ton of money, giving up a top 30 prospect, but it was just kind of a left-handed pitcher swap right there. So I get what you're saying. I wouldn't hold me to the returns. Hardly ever in this game do we see a 1-for-1 trade. Typically, it's a prospect package. There's money going, international money. The fact that I'm here in Cancun and that I got up at 7:30 to come up with this list is the best I could do.
You're a star. You're truly a star. And also, I can't believe that they swiped Louis Varland last year. I still can't get over that deal. Great work from KP. And if you have comments, then drop them below, please. And that's your light takes, some light trades that could go real heavy in the postseason. Why not go grab some Miller Lite today? Because game time is Miller time. Must be legal drinking age. Celebrate responsibly. Erik Kratz, you should have grabbed Aaron Judge's MLB debut jersey several years back. It's expected to
I wasn't there in 16. I wasn't there in 16.
Oh, right.
I was there in his rookie year. But yes, I should have stolen a lot of things from Aaron Judge's locker.
It's going to go for $3 to $5 million when it goes up for auction next month. $3 to $5 million for Aaron Judge's first jersey as a Yankee. Yes.
Yeah, it kills me that he doesn't have that in his house. I tweeted when this came out. I responded. It kills me. You should have KP. Do you have your jersey?
I do.
Okay.
And I think every player should. I think obviously I know money's what makes the world go round, but there are certain things that are, money can't buy for a player. Like getting my first hit baseball, I don't know what it would have sold for, probably not much money, but it's invaluable to me. I don't, Kratz, have your kids ever asked you, and I know this was a question you'd probably asked your parents a long time ago, if the house burned down, what's the first thing you would grab? Like our parents would have said photo albums, right? Because those are memories you can't get back. My kids asked me that same thing, and it's like, obviously I'm taking my phone, right? Because my whole life's on my phone, photos and everything of the family since you were born. But I'm probably going into my office and I'm probably taking a couple of those things that I can't replace, like my first hit, my first homer, like those things money can't buy. Every player should have 100%. Those things.
It's a travesty, and it's something that owners have really swept under the rug, the whole memorabilia and the amount of money. Last I heard, it passed a $1 billion industry for Major League Baseball owners, that none of that money gets shared with the players. And this is just a prime example of Steiner had a contract with the Yankees. And when I was playing there, a lot of guys would get into it and they'd say, oh, that was my debut jersey. And they would be like, actually, Steiner owns that jersey now. But you could sign 100 items, 500 items, and they'll give that to you. What? Like, I got to pay for my debut jersey? I just feel like it's a I feel like it is a cheap money grab. That clearly isn't cheap because $3 to $5 million, but it angered me every time I saw it because every other place it's different. But hey, you know what? Money makes the world go round, like you said, KP.
I'm just going to play the devil's advocate on this one. Aaron Judge makes a lot of money. He could buy that jersey, and also it helps to pay for his salary. It is true.
Okay. Longer segment than that.
That's fair. We've got breaking news on FT. What will the future of the sport look like? The latest proposal from Major League Baseball is in. Jesse Rogers with it first. In its next CBA, the league is proposing a max contract length of 5 years for free agent players that are switching teams. But wait, if you stay with your team, you get an extra year. You can stay for 6 whole years. No deferred contracts. Qualifying offer gone. 5 years to free agency for players 30 or older. What else? And this from Evan Drellick too, while I'm also reading Jesse Rogers, because he put it in a way. Basically, MLB said if players accept a salary cap, they'll do things like increase the minimum salary number to $1 million for players with 2+ years of service time. If you're 0 to 1, you'd get $900,000. So we're currently in the mid to high 700s for the 0 to 1, and then an extra $100,000 with a full year of service. So again, MLB is basically, this is the part finally where MLB came out and said, if you take the salary cap and the draft lowering and all of that other stuff, we'll make the minimum salary $1 million if you have at least 2 years of service time. Otherwise, we're going to go up like $150K to $900. $100K more for players with 0 to 1 years of service time, a potential $100K more. No more qualifying offer, which affects several players per offseason. And then they want to get rid of deferred salary and no change to the arbitration process in this one. So that actually is one of the most telling things to me is that they're not offering anything there. Then we probably won't see the arbitration process touched in the current battle. But who wants to start here with all of the fun that was thrown? Okay, KP.
I just want to know if do I get to keep my debut uniform? Then I'll sign anything. That's it.
All you want is your debut uniform. I think they would take that trade tomorrow. Done. We're going to play baseball in 2027.
That feels like that's how they negotiated 2 CBAs ago, and I was like, wait a minute, this is not important. Why are we negotiating clubhouse dues here, people? But anyway. Back to this CBA negotiation.
No, go ahead, Kratzy. Go, Kratzy. That was the point I wanted to make. I'll follow you.
No, that's really good. I like that. I would just say in every smattering of what is this, like 7, 8 items, what's the one that's going to be taken out of it? What's the one? Because as a player, I'm going to get crushed. Well, players, they just say no to everything. I think there's an answer somewhere in there. But with their proposal, if you remember their proposal, you're not getting drafted until you're older now. So now that falls in line with them saying, okay, if you're 30 years old, you only need 5 years of service. They're not taking anything away from their value as owners. They're just making sure that they're capping contracts. They're capping the ability to have those contracts. And I hope as the Players Association looks at these things and continues to not be distracted by the look at this and stays focused on the things that will better the game and not just better players' pockets and owners' pockets. And I think there's some nice things here, like the whole qualifying offer. To me, I don't think players should really have to negotiate the qualifying offer. Well, what were they offered last year? I think it was like 12 were offered and 3 picked it up last year. Like that's 12 out of, you're talking about 40 guys per team, 1,200 guys that you're negotiating. Like the owner should just keep it or take it away. It's not a majority thing. And owners are like, hey, we're totally fine with that. If that's what you want to get rid of.
Yeah.
Scott, correct me if I'm seeing this correctly, but this is in addition to what they already proposed.
Yes.
In addition to moving the draft, back, not
Layers,
being eligible
layers.
after high school. Yeah.
Layers of
So
proposals
yeah, I
that go
mean,
out as they're meeting in New York City about this stuff. And really, like, we need to preface this. Basically, everything we're talking about right now doesn't mean much. Like, it's pie in the sky from both sides. And then when we get to like February, they'll actually fix a couple things that they really want. So this is right now where you're a little kid and you say, hey, write what you want from Santa. And you're like, I want $1 million. I want the world's biggest house. I want all the best chefs in the world, right? You just write whatever you want.
To me, like, to your point, Kratzy, right now, like, I'm still trying to like process all the information, how this is in addition to all the other things. But you talked about like the shiny toy, right? To me, it's like a lot of this stuff is written in like really small print, and then a couple things are in bold print. And like, I feel like that's what they're trying to do. Like, obviously, players are not for the qualifying offer. That should be something that's gone, right? Free agency a year sooner. We're at 30 years old, but they're only like making these little couple adjustments in bold writing, and they're putting all like the stuff in fine detail in really small print.
Well, let me read a quote then from the MLB side, right? Because we're kind of trading barbs back and forth here. You've got the MLB proposal and you got the Player Association proposal. So one of the lead talkers for MLB, the Special Assistant Baseball Ops, Glenn Kaplan is the name. We've got a quote from him. So he said today, in addition to proposing the largest ever increase in minimum salary earned by over half of MLB players, we accepted 2 landmark changes to free agency that have been in place for 50 years. We agreed to both the PA's proposal to provide earlier access to free agency and their proposal to eliminate the qualifying offer system, a provision players view as a drag on free agency. We also proposed to eliminate deferred compensation and to create a new cornerstone player provision similar to the NBA's bird rights to give every team a fair shot at retaining their fans' favorite star players. So what happens here in the PR statement is the top saying, hey, we gave in on a couple things. Then at the bottom, we're going to talk about a couple things that we feel like impact fans. The main crux too of this that I think is a good back and forth. Again, most of this is a waste. A good back and forth to find out about from you guys is how much do you think the players that have barely been in the league will try and uprise over getting an extra $100,000 or something along those lines, right? Because MLB is trying to say, hey, we're going to give you a little bit more money. We're going to raise the minimum salary. Now, the sport keeps increasing by tons of percentage points in terms of revenue, and that minimum salary should go up anyway, but they should use that as a bargaining chip. So they're like, we're going to increase minimum salary and increase incentives for younger players to try and get them to agree to some things that we want to change within the sport. This is the whole dichotomy of trying to crack a group that has 1,000 people versus a group that has 30.
I mean, I would hope some young players are not going to crack over 100K. And I know the life expectancy of a Major League Baseball player is somewhere around 3 years. So an extra 100K for some guys that get to 3 years service time, I mean, that's $300,000. That's a pretty significant amount of money to them. But I almost just feel like, when you're on one side of the spectrum, when you're like a player and you're part of the Players Association and you're going against, the owners in Major League Baseball, it feels very political. And I hate that we're kind of in this climate. I relate it a lot to politics. Like, whether you're on one side of the spectrum or the other, you can still believe that the other side has maybe potentially some good ideas. And I just feel like we're at this point where there's some things in there, and I don't know at what cost I would trade those things for, but I do believe that there are some things in there that would make the game a little bit better. I don't know what the trade-off is, but I feel like the owners would never say it about the player side. If they came up with some good ideas, they would never agree to those ideas being good. I just feel like we're in a really tough spot, obviously politically, but also like when it comes to this, like it's your way or the other side doesn't matter. Like I think we're obviously at a point too. We've taken our footballs and gone to the other goalposts when we should be trying to get, meeting at the 50-yard line. But, it's tough, for me to like see some of this stuff and really process it. Like, I don't want to like speak out of turn. I'm really trying to process all this new information that just came out.
Yeah, and they want to cap the stars. This is coming in live as we talk. And last thing is free agents would be limited. This is Jeff Passan tweeting to 5 years, $202 million on contracts, because all of this is if they take a cap. Otherwise, none of this even means anything. That's what MLB's main crux of everything this go round, this fight is about. Much more on this. We'll have a guest on it tomorrow. Be right back. All right, we're here. Yeah, we can keep rolling, but all of this has to do with the cap getting accepted. Otherwise, none of it really means anything. That's why, again, it's like hard to take anything seriously when there's really just one fight this go round going on for the first time in 30 years. But Passon said, for example, Juan Soto's deal with the Mets is 3x the years and 3.8x the dollars that the league proposed to cap. So it's not just a salary cap. Of course, then you try and blend in capping contracts. So you're not just giving all of your money to one player. They want only, 15% of the dollars within the cap they're proposing to go to one player. So you don't overspend that way, because if we did have a cap, that would definitely happen, right? You're going to spend on a few guys and then you're going to try and league minimum a bunch of other guys to fit into the parameters. So they want to try and create a lane where it's not just going to look like that.
Yeah.
Kratz, I was gonna ask you, obviously we know that we've been in the union. We know like the cap is a non-negotiable, right? So throw that out. But when you look at some of these different sort of proposals, and obviously we don't know what the trade-off is, what you're giving up, but are there anything in here that you see that would make the game better?
When they start talking about minimums, because we already have a soft cap. When the owners say the word minimums, you give a soft minimum, you give penalties for that minimum, that solves a lot of parity, because now those teams are bringing themselves up to a level of that it makes it look like they're at least trying. And so when the owners do offer minimums, that's where I'm like, that's great. I'm glad they see that those teams need to spend to make this a equal parity that they're looking for, that they're saying that they're looking for, because we already have a cap. Yes, Dodgers do not follow it. Phillies do not. They're Yankees. There's teams that don't follow it, but they're restricted by it. There's nothing at the bottom. And when owners say that, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the other things, and I'm just trying to think how there's always going to be some level of manipulation too. But I'm looking at free agency after, age 30, regardless of service time. Does that allow teams to want to get guys into the major league sooner? Does it benefit guys who are kind of minor league career grinders and they get an opportunity to hit free agency?
A lot of it's minutia, and you do grab stuff out of it though.
Hey, just a quick second to tell you that we've got Dodgers territory coming up. Alana Rizzo, Katie Wu, and Clint Bacias, a part of the regular crew there. Make sure you check it out if you're interested in hearing about the Dodgers. But if you're not, we have almost every team covered as part of the FT network. We will be right back because we took too much time talking about other things and we're in trouble. Hey, can I get a few more things in here? And then we're also going to stay on for a few minutes after we say bye to the TV audience. Did you guys see this one? Totally snuck under the radar, but I will not let it get past this show. Abner Uribe accepted his suspension from 8 years ago when he did the DX sign to the Cardinals. Remember 8 years ago when he did that? Well, they appealed it. And then when he was used like in every game for a week, he was like, okay, I'm tired and we're on the road too. So you got the road taxes and all that. I'll take the day off. Let's do that. So it's just one of the most archaic processes of all time. Yeah, that one snuck through. Don't worry. I did not miss that one. I kind of live for notes like that because it grinds my gears, guys. We're in 2026. When someone appeals something, get the damn job done in like 24 hours, right? I mean, it's been weeks. I forgot that thing even existed. People were replying to the tweet like, wait, what? When was that? And I think
Hey, I'll be
hockey does
honest
it
with
really
you.
quickly.
When you said 8 years ago, I really started going back 8 years in my brain, thinking like, what did he do 8 years ago? But then, I mean, it feels like it, right? Because that was like a very hot topic. Like I remember seeing it, but like I would have sworn he had already served it, like, or they appealed it and they said no suspension. The fact that he's doing it this far down the road, it's insane.
It's a scam.
That's why we can't get anything done. That's why we can't get any deals done either. You can't even get an appeal done within 3 weeks.
And this is on everyone, right? Like this is on the league, this is on the player association. Like the little stuff, the minutia needs to get figured out in a CBA too. And I know they work on some of those things. Sometimes they'll work on some of those things before they get the big part done. But this is one of them. Hey guys, can we get an appeal process done like instantly, virtually? Because otherwise relievers never really get penalized. They just wait for a day when they're down. I mean, what am I missing? How stupid is this?
No.
Why even have a suspension?
Dumb. No, it's definitely dumb. But it'll never, because there's two sides that are trying to fight for each side's rights, and you can't make a precedent out of this.
Then don't do a suspension of one game. Like it has actual no meaning to a reliever. If it's a player that goes every single game every day, if it's Matt Olson or Pete Alonso, yeah, you actually lost a real game, right? To a guy that plays every day. But otherwise, it's so stupid. Hey, we're back with a very important message here. A dear friend to the show, David Samson, lost his daughter, Kyra, yesterday after a 9-month, 11-day fight, he said, against one of the cruelest diseases he's ever seen up close, of brain cancer for her. And just wanted to say we are thinking about the Samson family. We're thinking about his daughter on a really, really difficult year and a really difficult 24 hours. Just devastating. QR code, bottom right corner of the screen. We're going to donate a lot as a company to the fund there. That will go only directly towards fighting this terrible, terrible disease. I don't even know how to say the name of the type of brain cancer, but brain cancer of all kinds is just terrible. So it was really heartbreaking to see the news last night of someone gone way, way too soon. David, we are thinking about you here at the FT fam. BetMGM Locks, shall we, people? I lost yesterday. I got hooked. I thought the Phillies were going to score 1 billion runs. They only scored enough to win. Late in the game, Todd Father gets the dub with the under on the Yankees and the Tigers. Although, wait, what was the final score of that one?
4-2.
4-2. Oh, right. So he got tight there. Skubal gave up 3 homers, which, you know, he's not off to a great start post surgery, but we'll keep an eye on him. Tigers need every dub they can get, right? And then Braxton Ashcraft had 10 strikeouts and Ohtani 8.
Sure.
So your ladder continues.
Yeah, ladder cashes and keep on riding.
Yep, there you go. Money bags, everybody's up, so life is good. Fantastic year for the FT fam. About halfway through. It's halfway through the season for every team this week. KP, would you like to tell us what you put down this evening?
Yeah, we talked about the plane troubles for the Red Sox, so I'm going to go with the under. Obviously, Cam Schlittler's on the mound, but I also like early too, and I think it's 8 runs is the total, so I'm taking the under. I'm parlaying that with the over on the Cubs-Mets games because, quite frankly, I'm going to just bet against the Mets for the rest of the year. I don't believe in them, and I believe the Cubs will score a lot of runs.
Okay, that is not bold by you. That is tremendous. go against the Mets. Obviously, we're in day 3 of the ladder challenge, $50 to $1,000. I'm going to go Yankees money line. I think Cam Schlittler is a better pitcher than Conley Early. I think the Yankees team is better than the Red Sox. And I think the travels, I'm hedging a little bit extra with the travels. So I'm putting down today 127 for step 3 of the ladder challenge.
Right. And for everyone keeping track at home, Kratz started with $50. Now he's up to 127 for his first 2. And with this ladder challenge, you're often betting, odds that you wouldn't normally look into as much, or at least not me. I mean, some people like to throw down minus 250 pieces or minus 150 pieces or whatever, right? But keep following Kratz on that one, and we'll see how it goes as he's trying to accomplish getting halfway through the ladder tonight. For me, it looks like there's a common theme. I bought into it, just like you guys said. I'm going Yankees run line on this one. Schlittler's been so good. Early is great, I agree, but Yankees offense, I think, has been pretty impressive without Aaron Judge. Sometimes they kind of fall apart. That's not been the case. Paul Goldschmidt's having a year. I thought he was towards the finish line, and he's resurrected himself this season. Righties and lefties. Lefties, it's a joke, but even righties too, he's hitting them, and he's playing every day just about. So I'll go with that. And also, the plane troubles, the lack of sleep, the whole deal. Maybe the adrenaline gets to Schlittler, but the Red Sox are also terrible hitting at home, and they're back. So they had a brutal series in Colorado. I mean, we've got a few teams that are really leading the charge and seasons falling apart, and Boston had some bad losses out in Denver this week. So I'll go with the run line on that one, which is plus money, plus 115 on that one. So there are your locks. Good luck this evening to everyone on them. And tonight, is it tonight? Tonight or tomorrow night for USA?
Tonight, 10 o'clock. They're playing on the West Coast.
Got it. West Coast game tonight. So when the U.S.
Vancouver,
scored,
correct? It's in Vancouver or Seattle, one of the two.
I think it's in the U.S. for these games.
Yeah, it's in the U.S.
Seattle then.
Yeah, probably Seattle.
Yeah. It's definitely in the U.S.
Oh, we're hearing L.A. Look what we know. We know, just turn on the TV, watch the game, win a share of $500,000 in bonus bets for every U.S. goal, place a $5 or more pre-match bet on any World's game match in which the U.S. is playing, apply your goal rush token, and you can win a share of $500,000 in bonus bets for every goal scored by the U.S. in the match. And they've been giving out a lot of bonus bets because they're scoring right now. Bonus bets will be split among all eligible winners after the match. Gambling problem or concern, there's help. Call 1-800-GAMBLER.